I'm going to talk to you all about intuition today. Namely, I'm going to answer the questions, what is intuition? How can it be used? What's the difference between it and the mind? And how do we cultivate a greater connection to our intuition? And why would I want to do that? Let's start with the differences between the mind and intuition. So when we talk about the mind, we deal in the here and the now and the past. So the mind is like a recorder. It's constantly recording everything that's ever happened. But the framework that the mind generally uses is the filtering based on how it has recorded the event. So if the event was recorded as painful or something that was threatening, then the mind is going to be hypervigilant to look for any type of experience that would be kind of like that to save you from being hurt again. So the mind tends to be very polarized. Things are good or bad, right and wrong, shoulds are a big part of the mind. So the mind has been recording your past, and in the present, it's recording what's happening now and deciding if it's good or it's bad. So the mind is very linear. It's great for tasks. It's great for getting you out of danger at times, because the mind is something that is, again, a lot of these primal instincts and a lot of our nervous system responses in fight or flight have the mind wired in a certain way to protect us. So that's the mind. But when we talk about our intuition, the difference is that the mind is limited based on, again, your past and your current, what's happening and how you've decided to record those. I want you to think about it like a Google algorithm. If you didn't know this or not, you have an algorithm that's on your phone based on the searches that you do. So Google is constantly giving you information based on the interest that it has. So in some ways you have a bias. So if you're looking for a very varied amount of information or a different type of thought paradigm, you most likely won't get fed that in your feed because Google's trying to feed you more of what you like. So the problem with that, with the mind, is that if we haven't fed the mind certain types of experiences, or if we've reported them a certain way, or if we haven't had certain types of experiences, or we don't have a certain amount of knowledge, the mind simply can't have access to it. So there is a limitation with the mind. Let's talk about intuition and how is it different? Well, intuition is not based on knowledge. Intuition is based on energy and your creative abilities. I want you to think about intuition like the cell phone tower. And so at all times, it is beaming out signals and it's looking for vibrational matches of frequency. Everything is energy. Your thoughts are energy. The feelings that you have energy. Everything in our universe is energetic. And so how energy is looking for like energy, that is how kind of the pathway of intuition and how it's working. So intuition is able to bypass time and space, and it's following patterns of energy and similarities in energy. It also allows us to use different parts of our mind that give us access to information that we didn't actually learn. For example, in my own life is that I have always worked with essential oils, although I've had no formal training in essential oils, but it's always been an intuitive ability of mine to always know what oil to use, when to use it. And what's been funny is that as I've done some research after listening to my intuition is that it happens to always line up with what like the research says. But how would I explain that? Because I've had no formal training. But there's an energy that I'm reading, that my body is reading. And that is intuition in its most amazing sense, is that it gives you access to information that you didn't already know. It works on energy and it allows you to find creative pathways. So intuition is more of like the shortcut in some ways, because it's not just limited by the information you have and the thoughts that you've been thinking and your experiences, but it can kind of project into the future to know the path of least resistance, to know the more joyful path, to know a creative workaround in situations that maybe our mind can't seem to come out of. So those are the differences of the mind and intuition. One, again, based on knowledge, fact, and the experience. There is a bias, and intuition is creative, it's energetic. It's beyond what we can even fathom how it works. There's really, honestly, no words to a lot of the ways in which our intuition can work. But a lot of this signs that your intuition is working is the synchronicities, the times in which you listen to that nudge, and then somehow something kind of what seems almost miraculous happens, and then you have no way of explaining it. or that hunch to go a certain way, which then led you to meet a certain person. And you're like, where did that hunch come from? How would I have known that? So the cool thing about intuition is it's bypassing time and space in a linear sense that we understand time. So how do you know when to use each one? Well, the cool thing is that you have access to both at all times. So I want you to think of this less as a shut-off valve. We're not trying to either have one open or closed, but have them both being used. And I want you to look at intuition as being a more skillful tool that you can use at any point. So just like when we're learning to ride a bike, we have training wheels, or we ride a trike bike. Well, as we get older, we get more advanced and we start using a car because a car is much more efficient than riding a trike bike to where we want to go. Think of the intuition just like that. It's almost like even having a plane or being able to fly somewhere. It's just a more efficient and effective tool. So as we start to want to go through our lives and we're wanting to create bigger and better things, and yet we start to notice the limitations of time and space, such as resources or our time or the ability to know or not know something, this is a handy tool to have because we can get information without actually having to learn it. We can find a pathway through things without having to take all the time that it would take. Here's an example of how intuition can work and save you time. Let's say you're looking for a job and you know that in order to do that job, you're going to have to update your resume, you're going to have to get on LinkedIn, you're going to have to send out a bunch of resumes and cover letters, and then you just think about, oh my gosh, this is going to take a whole lot of time and I have no idea where to begin. Let's say you ask your intuition for some guidance and your intuition gives you a hint to contact a friend or someone, an acquaintance that you haven't known for many years. And you decide to follow up on that hunch and you reach out to that person and that person happens to tell you that they're also looking for a certain skill level, which happens to match the skill level you have. And then there you go, you start to move down that pathway to this job, right? Without having to do any of that work. That's kind of the creative workarounds that intuition provides. It also allows us to step out of the known because the mind, again, only knows what it knows. So it's really hard for us to create from a new paradigm of thinking. So if we really want to expand in a large way, so maybe we want to completely rearrange our life and live more largely in a way that we have way more free time and way more joy, our mind won't be able to figure that out, but our creativity, our intuition knows exactly the way to get there. But we just don't have that mind-based experience. The mind kind of gets stumped because it's trying to find the way based on the tools and information it has, where your intuition is able to figure out a way that you cannot even think of. So it truly is a revolutionary tool, and it's the way to find more easeful paths to where we want to go, and also to use a greater intelligence that doesn't rely on the bias of the mind and on what you already know. So hopefully you're seeing the differences between the intuition and the mind, and you'll know that they're both useful, although the greater tool and the more efficient way to work is with your intuition. So it's like having them on at all times and realizing what each one should do as far as their role. It's like having a specific role and knowing this is my sandbox to play in, and the intuition can function in many different ways, but the mind really doesn't need to function in the way of creating a future, problem solving when we get to more creative problem solvings. The mind is good for tasks. It's great if we want to, figure out how to fix a lawnmower, or if we want to read something and digest it, right? The mind is good for very linear tasks, doing accounting. But the intuition is great when we're really trying to solve a problem in a revolutionary way, a new way, when we're trying to find workarounds, when we want to find the path of least resistance, when we want to find more joy and ease. The intuition really can pair with the mind. So if we allow more of our intuition forward, then what gets to happen is our mind can kind of serve the intuition and complement it nicely. So let's talk now about how do I know, or how do I cultivate my intuition, and how do I know when it's working? So the voices of each can be really different. The mind tends to be at times very critical, judgmental, and polarized. Again, things right or wrong, black or white. Intuition doesn't work like that. The voice of your intuition is never judgmental. So if you're hearing a judgmental voice or a should, it's not really the mind. Most of the time, it's your intuition trying to get through and your mind wanting to control, because the mind really likes to control and likes to be in charge. The intuition works in ways of hunches or kind of like that quiet voice. I hear a lot of times people say it's like a quiet voice that I could easily ignore because maybe it sounds a little bizarre or off the wall. It's like, go left, but I always go right. Why would I go left? There's nothing this way. Or why would I call that person? Or why would I go to this coffee shop? I always go to this other coffee shop. It's things like that. It's these little voices of a hunch. Other people experience their intuition from their gut, like they just have a gut knowing or even a body sensation, such as, I just feel like I want to do this thing, or I just am feeling like my body is saying yes or no to this, or my body's really wanting this. That can also be a way that your intuition is talking to you. Emotions are another way that intuition talks to us. Things that feel bad or that we want to push away from, those can be our intuition saying no. Things that feel really good or things that allure us or draw us can be a way in which intuition is working with our emotions. Sometimes this knowing, I just have a knowing. This has happened to me many times when I've had a situation in which I was trying to make a decision. I'll give you an example. Recently, I was trying to hire some marketing support. And I had an intuitive hit to kind of talk to this one firm and when I looked at the price and I looked at it, it really didn't make any logical sense. It kind of seemed like, I could probably do without this. But for some reason, my intuition said, do it, keep working with this firm. And I chose to. And then I ended up really meeting someone that I've really enjoyed meeting and conspiring and collaborating with. So again, I didn't really know why I was to sign up with this marketing firm, but this marketing firm ended up really providing a whole lot of other benefits that I didn't really know because those weren't advertised necessarily as part of the package. But again, that's where the intuition supersedes what the mind knows. But it was just a knowing that I had. I couldn't explain it. And that's most of the time how the intuition works, is it's unexplainable. It may not be linear or logical, but it's just a knowing. And it generally is something that feels good, or might feel exciting or like, what is this? But it doesn't usually feel restrictive or kind of polarized. It generally feels expansive in some ways and kind of curiosity provoking. So the way to start to connect to your intuition is to first just have an intention. It's so important that we actually have a desire and an intention to work with our intuition, because it really is a tool. It's just like if we haven't really accessed something in a while, like if we've learned something, like if you learned Spanish and then you don't study it for a while, it gets a little rusty. But then once you start learning it again, it usually comes back. You were born with your intuition. It's nothing outside of you. It's actually something we're all gifted with at birth. We just lose sight of it as we get older and our mind gets stronger. So remember, this is just a process of recapturing and remembering a skill you already have access to. There's really no efforting. Really, the key to your intuition is ease. It's letting go and trusting. So the way that I like to cultivate it first is, one, make the intention, and then two, start to explore the ways in which you think your intuition might be working with you. If you're a really physical person, it might be through physical nudges or like a gut feel. If you're a really emotional person, it could be through your emotions. You might actually hear that kind of softer, quieter voice than your mind. Kind of play around with it. Expect to get signs. Ask your intuition to speak to you more clearly and obviously. Another tip that I have is to use it on less risk-aversive things. So if you're trying to use your intuition, it's kind of hard to start off with something as big as, should I leave my job? I really want to quit my job, or should I leave this relationship? Those are pretty big staked items. And oftentimes the fear response is so strong that we don't have as great of access to our intuition. Start small. Start with things like, what kind of food is my intuition telling me to eat today? How do I want to move my body today? How do I want to organize my day? Or what tasks should I do first today in my work? Use it with smaller things and listen and kind of get a sense for, again, not the mind of ration and logic and reason, but what am I feeling drawn to do? Where am I just feeling a natural energy, almost like a magnet? And follow it. Because the biggest kind of turning point in learning how to use our intuition is trusting. The only way you'll be able to heighten your skill of intuition is to trust yourself. And the way we trust ourselves is we take the risk and listen to our intuition, and we start to see the results of, wow, this really worked well for me. So as you build up more and more of those, you'll know how to listen to your intuition. And then normally you will have so many great experiences that you'll know how to key in. I also ask my intuitions for specific help with certain things like, hey, today I feel like I've got a lot on my plate. Can you help me find the most easeful and most direct path to get all of these things done? Can you find me some creative workarounds? Just the other day, I was having a gathering at my home, and I would have normally gotten up and gone right to the store and bought a bunch of the items that I needed. But my intuition said, hold off. I thought, why would I hold off? This makes the most sense in my day. But I did. I held off. And what happened was I got several emails a couple hours later that people were volunteering to bring many things that I was going to go buy. So it saved me a trip to the store and saved me money because I was going to go buy a bunch of things that I didn't need. Again, those are ways in which our intuition will work if we listen. So we've talked about what the differences are, how to use them, and now, again, how to strengthen it. So these are kind of the pillars of building trust with your intuition. I want you to also have a way of asking yourself at times, is this my intuition? So one way I do this is I ask, what part of the body is this kind of messaging coming from? I generally find the mind comes from the head, or it comes from a place of tension. I get a lot of people when I ask them this, when we're doing sessions, they'll say my shoulders, my back. It generally is a place that we carry tension because, again, the mind is oftentimes looking for survival or safety. And so to keep us safe, right, the mind's trying to control or restrict. Intuition never comes from tension. It always comes from ease, receptivity, openness, and abundance. So if you're feeling any of those other emotions, it will be harder to hear your intuition. And the best course of action is do something relaxing because we're in the state of more receptivity and openness. We are more accessible for things to come in. But when we're really trying too hard and efforting, it makes it really hard and the mind generally amps up. When I ask people where intuition is coming from, I might get a place like here or a place outside the body sometimes. I often get the heart, the stomach, the pelvis. These are all areas. There's no right or wrong, but it's just interesting to note if you're hearing a voice and it sounds constrictive or heavy, most likely it's not the intuition. So you can say, thanks, mind, but I really wanted my intuition to speak to me. I'll let you help once we get the direction. So you can just dialogue with it as if it's a separate voice. One other distinction between intuition and mind is the mind tends to have a very convergent focus, which means that it generally narrows in on something and it's really trying to figure it out and wrestle with it in some ways. The intuition has a very divergent focus. It's very open and receptive. So if you can imagine your brain like this, I'm so open to creative ideas coming in, to synchronicities coming in. Imagine yourself opening. That can often be a great pathway and a great way to kind of visualize what your intuition looks like. Another tool that I use to help accentuate my intuition is aromatherapy. I tend to use an oil like peppermint, rosemary, lavender, and I place a drop here on my third eye, right between the eyebrows. Any oil that for you resonates with opening to information, to creativity, to expansiveness, to abundance, that oil can work too because your intention is most important. But just kind of generally allowing yourself to put your awareness there and softening that area. You can also do the same thing with the heart. Again, these places of wisdom. Remember that the mind is generally having us run from fear, and intuition is having us receive what is already available to us. So there's this innate ability to see yourself as a being of power, of magnetism, and that things come to you. It's really the reverse of the mind, because the mind is, I got to figure this out. I got to go do this. It's all on me. And intuition is, I'm just open and receptive and easy, and what I need comes right to me. So try on that type of emotional, energetic state when you're trying to talk to your intuition. I hope this has been helpful. I get so many questions about intuition from clients and from people through the years. And I just want to really stress how important this tool is and what an advanced tool this is. And it can be completely life-changing. Of the Genius tool set that I feel like we're going to need in this new paradigm of living more easefully and abundant and really allowing ourselves to have what we want, intuition is probably your greatest asset. And remember, the doorway to intuition is ease and flow and trust. So the more you can lean into those emotions and frequencies, the greater access you'll have to your intuition. And don't forget, you already have access. It's always there. It's just a matter of, are you open and willing and trusting that it's there for you? Because it certainly is. Good luck, friends. And I hope that you really allow yourself to heighten and sharpen this skill that will truly change your life.